This week on Beyond the Stats, the 76ers and Pacers have decided to part ways with their head coaches. Our top matchups of the week. But first, sports paused earlier this week.
This is Beyond the Stats with Zach and Tanner.
Like I said, sports paused earlier this week in protest of the shooting in Kenosha, Wisconsin of Jacob Blake. He was shot most people know, but he was shot in the back 7 times while trying to leave with his children in the car because there was a fight going on and the police were called, and he was like, oh, well, I'm going to leave, and then got into an altercation with the police and then was shot in the back 7 times. He survived, but is paralyzed from the waist down. So in protest of that, the NBA, the National Basketball Association, Major League Soccer, the Women's National Basketball Association, as well as the NHL suspended play, suspended games, and then a lot of NFL teams suspended practice this week.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So, and the NBA was in jeopardy of ending the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
They're back on today. Most sports returned either Thursday or Friday. The NBA's returning to action this Saturday. It was started by the NBA really with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yep.
Postponing or boycotting their Game 5 matchup against the Magic, which then got pushed to today, this Saturday, at the point of this filming. So that's kind of what's been going on. We're into August and protests started really on May. Yeah, the day, even probably the day of the death of George Floyd, at least when the video came out, because he was killed on May 25th. And we've had protests basically all summer, and now the shooting of Jacob Blake has reignited it in a lot of ways as things have seemed to die down, or at least isn't as on the front burner as it was, and now it's being reignited again. And things are a little bit different this time. Sports are back, and things have changed a little bit since May. So, so people are talking a little bit more about it. Sports just stopped for a day, almost 2 days.
And Zach, I think the big thing I want to mention is, as you said, the NBA started it. And I can tell you exactly what happened because I watched this. The Orlando Magic, they came out, they decided, they were warming up, and all of a sudden they noticed that the Bucks hadn't, and then they decided then that they went back to their locker rooms because they had heard that that's what Milwaukee was doing. Again, as you had mentioned, it took place in Wisconsin where Milwaukee is at. So It's appropriate that it was the Milwaukee Bucks who started this whole thing. It's in the state where it happened. And it shows, basketball is the sport. They're happy to be back amidst everything that's been going on in 2020. But they're also letting them know that we're basketball players, but we're also people as well. They all agreed to it. There were no Bucks players, no one from within the Bucks coaching staff. I said, players. And I think I give props to them. They were letting them know, this is not something we're just going to let blow over. As you said, it seemed like it was starting to, like you said, I don't think die down is the right word, but just in terms of it seemed like things were starting to go at least okay. And then this happened, which sparked, lots and lots and lots of controversy, and still is now. So it definitely makes sense. And also within the stretch, again, at the time of this filming yesterday, for the MLB was Jackie Robinson Day. So it's a miss that so much was happening. So then again, it kind of had this effect, first Milwaukee, then Orlando, then the game after, which was Oklahoma City and Houston, and then of course Portland and Los Angeles. Then again, they had that meeting and it talked about how they finally had a vote, and they were going to ask, do you guys want to continue the playoffs? And which is an important meeting that they had with that. We know Chris Paul is the head of the NBPA, so he was huge with this. So you figured Oklahoma City was probably not going to, but they might have decided. But like I said, Milwaukee, really big props to them. They kind of started this to again, remind people that sports are a great way to kind of escape from certain stuff. But by the end of the day, they're not just basketball players. They are people also.
Yeah, and I think moving to the other sports, there was MLB where teams came out in the field, laid uh, the first on Wednesday night, they laid a Black Lives Matter shirt at home plate, stood out there for a while, and then left. And then last night or yesterday, because it was Jackie Robinson Day, they laid a 42 out on home plate and then stood out there for 42 seconds and then went back into their dugouts and then didn't play games. Some teams did play, like the Cubs played on Wednesday, even though some players sat out of the Cubs games. Jason Hayward specifically sat out, but then told his teammates play the game, even though I'm going to sit out of this game. And so that happened. And it's just, yeah, I mean, the way it's been, so across sports across sports in the U.S., baseball, basketball, football, hockey just didn't happen. Soccer didn't happen. Detroit Lions, I think, were the first team to cancel practice and stand out and boycott.
I believe you're right, but then I know a lot of other teams did as well. And I just want to quickly mention that I think one sport particularly that I think needs to get more credit for is the WNBA. We saw the shirts that actually each letter spelled out Jacob Blake, and then the most impactful part of that, I personally, on the back, it had 7 holes in it or dots on it to represent the 7 shots. So I think that, I mean, I give props. It's a great way to kind of let people know, again, like with the Bucks and with the NBA and with a lot of sports, we're not just athletes, we're people, and we have these opinions and we're strong on it. And we are, we're tired of seeing this kind of stuff happen, because not only is it causing harm to within us, it's causing harm to a lot of people, which is not what they want. But it needs to be brought up. And again, I think the WNBA shirts, I don't think got as much recognition as it should, but it's a very, very powerful message they were trying to get across.
Yeah, and I'm not going to. Yeah, I commend everyone for the stance they took.
Absolutely.
I give props to all of them for what they did. They did what they thought was right, and at the end of the day, people are dying, and people are scared of police officers, and people are afraid. Like, they're just afraid of what's going on. I think about myself and my brother. My brother's been stopped by police while walking in broad daylight multiple times. I mean, he's okay. He left those situations fine, but he's just walking somewhere and he doesn't know why he's getting pulled over while walking. I mean, I've been pulled over while driving for something that just wasn't true, to be completely honest. Luckily, my dad was in the car and it was okay. But in the moment, it was really scary because I was like, why am I getting pulled over? I didn't do anything. Why am I getting pulled over? I didn't do anything. And luckily, I'm okay. But we've seen it so many times where they didn't end up okay. Philando Castile. I mean, Breonna Taylor died while sleeping in her home. Tamir Rice died while playing with a toy gun that was obviously a toy gun in a park. He was 12. A 12-year-old plays with a toy gun. Why are you dying? It's just tiring, and it's hard, and yeah, I mean.
And Zach, it's so upsetting to see, you, of course, not only are, my broadcasting partner, you're also one of my closest friends, and it's upsetting when you see, especially when it's close friends. Now, and that's not to say that it's not for everyone, but when you know someone that feels in those moments when they feel scared, it can be, and you can't feel the same way because you don't know what it's like. But at the same, it's a scary situation. To be honest, one reason why I think a lot of the athletes decided to play is we look at this. LeBron James, one of the best athletes we've seen in the NBA, maybe even in sports. He wants to use his, I don't want to say power, but he wants to use his, everyone knows who LeBron James is, whether you watch basketball or not. He wants to, that's perfect. He wants to use his platform to let people know this is still an issue, and we're not going to let you know. He lets it publicly know on his social media, where he's got hundreds of thousands to millions of followers. This is where all different types of athletes everywhere, they use their platform to let people know, and make sure you open your eyes and know there is a problem with this going on, and you need to make sure that you open your eyes to it. So I think that's one reason why initially, when the Lakers and Clippers were the two teams that did not want to play, but I think, and I don't want to say gave in, but they kind of maybe started thinking, we can still use our platform to let people know. That is one reason. It is still an issue, and we are going to make sure that you know about it. So I think that's one reason why. And again, it can be very scary times for everyone, but it's definitely interesting times. As much as I'm a fan that they're back for sports, at this point, I'm not only my back for the competitiveness, but to keep they're going to keep raising awareness, not just in their seasons, pretty much even beyond 2020 for decades and decades in the future.
I hope it's not decades, Tanner. I hope it's not.
In terms of raising awareness for it, letting people know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's I'm ready. I'm ready to be done in a lot of ways. I'm ready. Like, we need to keep talking about it. It needs to keep being in people's faces, and we need to keep having hard conversations. We need to keep letting it not die. And I think decades, or not decades, I don't know why I said decades. And I think it needs to be at the forefront, along with, I mean, there are plenty of movements right now that need to be on the forefront, but I think it should be one of the things at the forefront of the conversations in the U.S. right now, because it's been going on forever. And yeah, it's more aware now because we have phones to be able to film these things. Things are changing. Things are just becoming more public in a lot of ways. And I hope, yeah. And it's going to continue to be talked about. People are going to continue talking about it, and people are going to keep making demands, and things are going to change. It's just how are they going to change that we don't know about. But things will change. That's just what's going to happen, because
absolutely. No, yeah. I think things will change. You're going to keep using this platform. That's why when I, had mentioned for this to come, they will still use their platform in all different aspects, might I add. When it was back in March, it would be, to focus on, washing your hands and everything. I know the NBA, a lot of their commercials were focused on, stay safe, stay quarantined, follow the guidelines, because we want to get back, but you got to follow this. That's kind of the beauty of sports in that platform, because it could be, and you may have talked about this, personal social media, it could be the best thing for you, could be the worst thing for you. And that's the great part about these athletes. For the most part, they use their social media to help let people know, this is an issue. You need to do this. You need to look into this. And that's the beauty. And that's why I said their platform will be a huge influence on all aspects in every single part for so many people out there, whether it be the littlest of children to the oldest of adults. That's the beauty of their platform. So again, I commend all the athletes who are letting people know what is going on in the world right now and trying to help them open their eyes.
All right, we're going to step aside. When we come back, we'll be talking about coaching changes in the NBA. We'll be back here on Beyond the Stats.
Welcome back here on Beyond the Stats. As always, I'm Tanner Camp, and as always, never, ever, ever anyone else. My partner in crime, Mr. Zachariah Begley. So, Zach, we've got some coaching firings, or at least coaches that have been released. Two pretty big names in terms of our teams that, we've recognized that have a lot of talent. Right. Starting things off, the Philadelphia 76ers, they have decided to part ways with Brett Brown, of the coach. He was there for 7 seasons, and it was a big part of the process situation. And they have good players, Simmons and Embiid, and when Butler was there, Tobias Harris, but they just, and I think the Ben Simmons was tough, but just kind of something about Embiid. So, but he's parted ways, and then Another one, the Pacers. They decided to fire Nate McMillan after they were swept in the first round of playoffs by the Heat, and especially since they had just worked a contract extension, so that was a little surprising after hearing that. But
Right.
so both the 76ers and the Pacers are looking for their new head coach immediately. But Zach, I guess with both McMillan and Brown, when you hear that they got like five, do you think that there was any specific reason? Like, because I mean, they both focused that they got swept in the first round,
Right.
but it definitely can't just be one series, especially when we're in a different NBA season / playoffs thing here. But do you think there's any other reason for both the Sixers and the Pacers? You can start with whichever
Right.
team. Do you think there's a reason that both teams decided to let their coaches go?
I think the 76. So the Pacers one is a little more confusing to me
Mhm.
on why they released or they fired Nate McMillan. So I'm going to start with the 76ers. And I
Okay.
think understandable. It's 7 years. They haven't made it past the second round in his 7 years there. I mean, part of those 7 years was with terrible Philadelphia teams because he's hired in 2013 and the rookie in 2013. I don't even remember who they drafted in the first round, but Embiid was 15, Ben Simmons was 16. So it was even 2 years before he got any real talent. Dario Saric came in somewhere in there, things like that. So, but he hasn't gotten the talent to work in a number of years. I mean, maybe some of that is Elton Brand getting rid of shooters and bringing in bigs and doubling down on size in 2020 isn't how it works.
Right.
To be honest, Ben Simmons and Embiid don't really fit. Neither of them are floor spacers. So, and they both need to be near the bucket. Embiid can shoot a little bit. Ben Simmons has hit, 2 threes in his career?
Probably.
Something like that. At least one. He's hit one, maybe two. So, clearly, the lack of shooting is there. And then they added, and Tobias Harris is not a bad shooter, but then they got rid of Jimmy Butler and JJ Redick and then added Al Horford, who also isn't a shooter, and in fact is a center. And they tried to play him at power forward next to Embiid, and it didn't work because they literally have no spacing at all. And Al Horford is really a 5 in the modern NBA. He's a 5.
Definitely. Yeah.
Right. So it's not surprising that Embiid is gone. Or sorry, that Brett Brown is gone. It just didn't work. He couldn't get it to work. Elton Brand, their GM, is staying, so that's interesting. Yeah, but I'm being honest, I kind of blame most of it on him and less of it on Brett Brown because he didn't build a roster that works well in 2020. But that's here nor there. Brett Brown's been there for 7 years. It didn't work, so it's not surprising. For Nate McMillan, on the other hand, I am genuinely surprised. They really, once they lost Sabonis, I don't think they could have beat with Sabonis. It's a series, but without Sabonis, it makes it a hard series. And to be honest, he's had some bad luck with injuries. Sabonis this year, Oladipo has been injured last year. Oladipo hasn't rounded back into form yet. He was out for so long, and it just got back, and it's not surprising he played the 8 games in the bubble, and then, the one playoff series, what's that? That's 12 games. 12 games is not enough time to round back into form.
And you need to remember, because he's still kind of, when he came back, it was only within a few weeks before the NBA shut down because of a coronavirus. Right. And then, as you said, then there's all that time to rest. Remember, at one point, he was considering not coming back, at least for the restart, just to get healthy. And as a Pacers fan, I wouldn't have blamed him because, we haven't seen, when he was first in Indiana, there was just something about, he was explosive. And it's not that he lacks confidence. He's getting that back slowly but surely. But you said, and Sabonis, they centered a lot of their offense around him because, he's a good scorer down low. I think he's a very underrated. He's a great passer, especially down low. But no, so I'm like you. I was confused, especially since, as you said, the last 2 years were just hit with injury bugs and everything. So no, I'm like you.
Yeah.
I'm confused by it, especially since now he's there. Nate McMillan is actually where he ranks third in the Pacers history since the Pacers became a team in the NBA, of course, an ABA team before. The only two coaches I mean, how about this? Frank Vogel, most wins by a Pacers coach in the NBA, and then Larry Brown right there. So
Yeah,
he
that's
had
good
some
company.
success.
That's good company. And also, I mean, he honestly, he's done a terrific job getting the Pacers team to the playoffs when they're missing their best player.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not. It was a sweep, so maybe that's what did it. They're like, okay, we can't get swept in the first round by a Miami team, especially when they were the higher seed. So that could have been it. I don't know if that's what they probably don't get swept if it's not in a bubble. You have to take that into account. But yeah, less surprising. Looking at some options, Mike D'Antoni.
So we'll stay with the Pacers.
We'll stay with Pacers. So yeah, D'Antoni is the number one name right now for the Pacers. I mean, the offense will be fast. That's for sure. I mean, look at what he's done. The 7 seconds or less offense in Phoenix, and then this Houston offense that they have down there. I mean, they'll just shoot a lot of threes if they get D'Antoni. The 76ers is a little less clear. I know the assistant MA I know how he spells his name. I just feel like I'm gonna butcher it.
Is it Udoka?
Yeah, Udoka, something like that.
The assistant coach for the 76ers.
I mean, it's only his first year. It was with Popovich before. Brett Brown's also a Popovich guy, so maybe they don't want to go with back-to-back Popovich guys. But
I see a list here too of potential, and Tyronn Lue, assistant coach for the Clippers, of course.
Yeah,
he was the head coach for the Cavs when they won their championship. Jay Wright, actually, from the Villanova Wildcats.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, the only and this is not against
Villanova.
No, because and also look what happened to the Cavaliers last time they got a college coach.
They picked. Yeah, I mean some college coaches could coach in the NBA, but I don't think I think Coach K could coach in the NBA.
Honest. Especially since he's coached a USA basketball team before, so he's gotten that experience. This is an interesting one. Stan Van Gundy.
He hasn't coached in a while, but he was on the forefront of three-point shooting in the early 2000s, so I think he would work in the modern NBA. He got the Magic's team in 2009 to the playoffs, and honestly, the way they built that team would be perfect. They centered around Dwight Howard and just got shooters all around him, and that's what they need to do with either Embiid or Simmons. I think they need to trade one and then build around the other with a bunch of shooters. But he's already shown how to make it work with one player who can't shoot and then just surround him with shooters. Maybe he'd like to keep Embiid and do what he did with Dwight Howard and Embiid. I think that would work. Or he goes with, or if they go with Ben Simmons to get almost the Magic Johnson look. And that's what the Lakers did in the 80s, just surrounded Magic Johnson with a bunch of shooters. I mean, they shot less because it was the 80s, but I think Stan Van Gundy makes a lot of sense actually, just because he's shown a blueprint how to build around someone who can't shoot with a bunch of shooters, and then also has gotten to the finals doing that. I mean, yeah, they lost to the Lakers, but he made the finals and honestly got through LeBron and the Cavs to do it. So, yeah.
And it'll definitely be interesting. And a quick final note before we wrap this segment up. It's been told before that Van Gundy actually really has gushed about Ben Simmons and his defensive abilities. And he actually thinks that at some point Ben Simmons either should have or even will win a Defensive Player of the Year award. So you can tell he's definitely been talking about the Sixers whether through this bubble or during Simmons' career. So it'll be interesting, and I can't wait to kind of find out who they decide, because I know, and I am obviously a Pacers fan. I want the Sixers to do good because they've always had that talent. They just, like the Pacers, they just can't find a way to get farther than they than they should. And part of that is other teams are super talented, and some is just the coaching. So it'll be interesting for both the Pacers and the Sixers, who they decide on, and we'll definitely keep up to date with that. So we're going to wrap this segment up right here. But when we come back, it's probably my personal favorite. And Zach, I think you might be able to. It's our top 5 key matchups of the week. We'll give you those when we come back. Once again, Zachariah and Begley, Tanner Camp, and this is Beyond the Stats.
Welcome back here to Beyond the Stats. Zach Begley joined by the one, the only Tanner Camp. We're looking at our matchups of the week. Tanner, I'm going to kick it to you first.
All right.
I mean, I have matchups also, but I want to hear yours.
I hope you have matchups. That's what this is about. But no, so I'm going to start things off with the NBA. I got to go Celtics Raptors. I mean, so far, here's the crazy thing. At least at the time when we have filmed this, it's the only definite series in a conference semifinals. There have been no,
right.
I guess, well, yeah. So I think that's kind of crazy. But I think both you and I were expecting that from both were sweeps. So that should be a great series. Of course, again, at the time of this filming, we wait for the Bucks and Magic, and the Bucks will most likely win that and play the Heat. Still no conference semifinal matchups in the West, but I got to go Celtics Raptors just because it's a great series. These two teams have seen each other a lot. I really hope this goes to 7. I'm not even worrying about 5 or 6. I'm going right to 7 with that one. So that whoever wins truly deserves a spot in the conference finals. And then the next one, I know I've mentioned this. And the Celtics Raptors, by the way, on Sunday, 1:00. That's when that game is. I got to mention the Thunder and Rockets. I mentioned it before, but I have to pick it again. The Rockets were up 2-0, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, thanks to a little man by the name of Chris Paul, have just been and he's been phenomenal.
You're right. Yeah.
Through this series. So I picked that. There have been a lot of speculations. I think Westbrook is coming back for Game 5. If not this game, for sure the next, which would be a huge difference in the series. But Game 5 again on today at 6:30 p.m. Switching over to the MLB. Got some interesting matchups. I picked the White Sox and the Twins. They don't play till Monday, and that's when their series start. But at least before, because right now both teams are 20-12-2 of the top teams in the American League, both tied actually for third with the Cleveland Indians. So 2 really good teams, and I think that'll be a difference maker for the standings. And then next Friday, and I gotta put it, Cardinals Cubs. I mean, we've put it before, but it can't be stressed enough. It's a great rivalry. A lot of people argue it's the best rivalry in baseball, and even one in all of sports. So I had to pick Cardinals and Cubs, which on Friday at 7:15, and then NHL. Last time I picked the Golden Knights and Canucks, and that's at 1-1. So that's really awesome. And I think you picked this. I picked the Flyers. I believe the Flyers are the Flyers are the higher seed. But Game 1, Islanders win 4-0. Game 2, the Flyers win 4-3 in overtime, though. So far, even though it's 1-1, the Islanders definitely have the advantage in terms of momentum. Now, if it slows down, we have no idea, but that game's tonight at 7. That's going to be one that I want to keep an eye on. So those are my 5 matchups, and I will be very interested, as always, to hear what your 5 are.
All right. Our list is kind of similar, actually. Very similar. That's okay. I also have Celtics and Raptors. Yeah. Basically because it's the only game that's moved into the second round. And both teams went swept. The Celtics sweep is a little more impressive than the Raptors sweep, just because I think 76ers are, in my opinion, a better team than the Nets, at least in its current iteration.
True. But props to the Nets. I'll be honest, when we first heard this, I predicted they wouldn't even make the playoffs. So I give props. They held on to that spot. I give full props to them.
Right. So Celtics and Raptors there. I think that I also agree it's going to go to 7. You didn't make a prediction, but I want to go with the Celtics, but the Raptors just seem to be playing so well defensively. I think I'm going to go with the Raptors, but in 7. And honestly, now that I said that, the Celtics are probably going to win, but it's fine.
So then you know what? Then I'm going to do it. My prediction then is the Celtics to make it a little more interesting. But no, I'm like you.
Just to be contrarian.
But no, kind of the reason being, like, I don't know. I feel like, and I don't want to take anything away from the Nets because they're still a good team, but they would be a completely different team if they had their key players that they just that playing the 6. I have much of an advantage, but I think it's done. I don't know how that happened, but no, I think Celtics. I think it's going to be Jason Tatum's time to shine and finally get himself a chance to win an Eastern Conference championship.
Yeah. So number 2, I have Astros and Athletics, and not because it's the Astros versus everybody. I just think it's going to be a good series. Both teams have lots of talent, and I just, and it's the American League, and I just think they'll play well against each other. Then I had the Padres and Rockies. The Rockies have cooled off a bit because at one point they were the number 1 team in the NL West, but the Padres have been on fire. And seem to hit a grand slam every other game at the moment. It's kind of ridiculous how many grand slams they've hit in over the past like week and a half. I mean, I think they've hit more grand slams in the last week and a half than like the rest of the MLB has hit all year. I don't know if that stat's correct, but it feels like it.
That's a good game. I was considering that. I looked at that. Yeah. That's a good pick.
And the Rockies were pitching well. I mean, they still have one of the best lineups in terms of hitting. I mean, they have the league leader in batting average and Charlie Blackmon, who's batting like 450. Then they have the best third baseman in baseball, Nolan Arenado, and then they have Trevor Story, who also hits well. So they got plenty of talent there. And then the next matchup, White Sox and Twins again, tied for first with the Indians in the NL Central. The Twins have talent, so do the White Sox. White Sox have been hitting really well as of late. I think they've only lost. I think they're 10-1 over the last 11 games. Like just something insane. Like they lost to the Cubs once, but have won every other game and over the last 11. And that's, I mean, and then the Twins, they won the NL Central or AL Central last year and have just been continued to pick up where they left off and been playing good baseball through it all. And then my last pick is also the Flyers and Islanders. You said I picked it last week, but I actually picked the Avalanche and the Stars last week.
Oh, you got me on that one because of the high scoring. You got me.
Yeah. That series has been high scoring, but not close. So I'm going with the Flyers and Islanders, which is same reason, 4-0 win by the Islanders and then a 4-3 win in overtime by the Flyers. And the Flyers are the higher seed. So the Islanders are hanging right there. And I mean, they blew them out in game 1 and then barely lost in game 2. So they're clearly not outmatched by this Flyers team, which has been really good all year in the NHL. So yeah, that's my top 5 matchups of the week also.
Well, as you said, a lot of similarities there. And you know how the old saying goes, great minds think alike. So very similar with those matchups right there.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have. You can find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Beyond the Stats. Again, full audio podcast on all the major podcasting sites at Beyond the Stats and on YouTube at Beyond the Stats. Leave feedback, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you're on YouTube. You know, do all the things to continue seeing our work. We'd love to hear what you think. Yeah, that's all we got.
That's it, and that's it. Number 25 for a fun fact for everyone. Episode 25. 25 great episodes. Obviously, when we first planned this in episode 1, not exactly where we thought it was, but we've been really happy with it. So thanks for those 25 episodes down. So many more to go. So a lot of appreciation and thanks that we love getting to do this every single Saturday. It's so much fun. I couldn't think of any better way to spend it. But until next time, as always, I'm Tanner Camp and this has been Beyond the Stats.